Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today is Friday, April 11th, 2025. The world has no rule book for deep sea mining. One company is pushing forward anyway. Negotiators are hammering out rules to govern mining on the ocean floor, where critical metals are found in deposits called polymetallic nodules, where ferromanganese nodules in the North Atlantic. In the global race for critical minerals, one little-known international agency has long held the keys to a potential mother lode. Vast quantities of metals located on the remote seafloor. The International Seabed Authority, ISA, has worked for more than a decade to draw up regulations for a future deep-sea mining industry. Those efforts continued this week as negotiations around the world convened at ISA headquarters in Kingston, Jamaica. Now, though, one mining firm says it plans to move forward, with or without the rule book in place. The Metals Company, a Canadian startup, says it will seek approval this year to launch the world's first deep-sea mining in the Eastern Pacific Ocean. By working with one of the few countries that never joined the ISA, the United States. Some delegates and observers at the ISA meeting in Kingston condemned the move, saying it could lead to poorly regulated mining and harm ocean health. This is a desperate, very dangerous announcement, said Louisa Casson, an activist with Greenpeace International. It's a slap in the face to international cooperation. Gerard Barron, CEO of the Metals Company, said he made the controversial decision after the ISA missed deadlines for finalizing its regulations. He hopes that the Trump administration can provide a quicker path to mining approval. The U.S. is showing very strong leadership at a time when industrialization and jobs have left the U.S., Barron said. They need to rebuild. They need metals to do that. Why mine the ocean floor? Scientists know little about the deep seabed. Most of the ocean floor hasn't been mapped. Researchers believe most species living there remain unidentified. But one thing is certain, there's a lot of metal down there, including key materials used in technology like electric car batteries. The U.S. Geological Survey has estimated that a single swath of the Eastern Pacific, known as the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, contains more nickel, cobalt, and manganese than all combined terrestrial reserves. These metals plus copper are bound up in potato-shaped deposits called polymetallic nodules. which form over millions of years. As minerals in the sweet water accrete around bits of organic matter, those nodules are scattered across the sandy seabed as the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, an area about half the size of the contiguous U.S. that sits between Hawaii and Mexico. These nodules have tempted would-be miners for decades. Mining firms claim the deep seabed could provide a major new source for minerals independent of China, which controls the supply of many critical minerals. How would deep-sea mining work? To retrieve the nodules, mining firms plan to send uncrewed collector vehicles down to the bottom of the ocean. The metals company vehicle, which is about the size of a school bus, would crawl along the seabed, hovering up nodules and sending them through a miles-long vertical tube to ship waiting on the surface. Some observers describe this system as the world's longest vacuum cleaner, but for critical minerals instead of dust bunnies. In 2022, the metals company completed a field test of this system. In the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, which the firm deemed successful. Next, the company wants permission to begin commercial production in the region. After working through the ISA for years, the metals company now says it will apply for exploration licenses and commercial recovery permits from the United States by the end of June. Congress passed a law in 1980 to regulate seabed mining, but the metals company would be the first firm to apply for a commercial mining license under it. What are the environmental impacts? Supporters of seabed mining claim it will be less destructive than mining on land. Barron, the metals company CEO, points to Indonesia. The world's leading nickel producer, where mining happens in biodiverse rainforest regions. In contrast, he argues, the vast sandy plains of the deep seabed harbor far less life. For some reason, people think it's okay to go digging up rainforests to get the metals underneath them. Yet we're debating whether we should be going to pick up these rocks that sit on the abyssal plain. Something has got screwed up here, Barron said in an interview with NPR earlier this month. Many marine scientists and policymakers disagree. Researchers say they've identified more than a dozen ways seabed mining could damage ocean ecosystems. Animals including sea sponges and anemones grow up on the nodules. So removing the nodules would destroy that habitat. Sediment plumes released from mining operations may harm creatures adapted to the clear waters of the deep ocean. Noise pollution from seabed mining could interfere with animal navigation and communication. Polymetallic nodules containing certain minerals can be found scattered across in some parts of the ocean. Here, manganese nodules found off the eastern U.S. in 2019. Ecosystems will be deeply harmed, said Gina-Grillo. An ISA delegate from Costa Rica. Species that we don't even know will be eliminated because we don't even know what's down there. Costa Rica is one of the 36 ISA countries that have called for a precautionary pause on the mining activity. At least until regulations are complete. Hundreds of researchers have also called for a pause. On deep sea mining until scientists can learn more. Which could take years. Some companies, including automakers and tech firms like BMW, Volkswagen, Volvo, Google, and Samsung, have pledged not to use seabed minerals. Some mining companies say damage could be mitigated with new technology. One startup, Impossible Metals, is developing a fleet of underwater robots that would hover over the seabed instead of crawling along it. The robots would use mechanical arms to pluck nodules that have no visible life on them. The company claims this method would eliminate sediment plumes and reduce noise pollution. Though the technique hasn't been tested at the extreme depths where mining would occur. Who decides if mining happens? Individual countries regulate mining with their own exclusive economic zones, generally extending 200 miles from the coast. A handful have begun permitting the exploration for seafloor minerals, including Japan, the Cook Islands, Papua New Guinea, and Norway. Though Norway paused its permitting process late last year. But most of the seabed lies beneath the high seas, beyond the control of any country. That's where the ISA has traditionally had jurisdiction. The ISA was launched in 1994 by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. A treaty colloquially dubbed the Constitution for the Oceans. It includes every major economy with a coastline except the United Nations. It includes every major economy with a coastline except the United States, which never ratified the treaty. The ISA has granted 31 contracts, allowing member countries and partnered companies to explore for seabed minerals, mostly in the Clarion-Clipperton zone. China has snapped up 5 of these exploration contracts, more than any other country. But nobody has moved from exploration to exploitation. That's in part because the ISA hasn't finalized regulations for a commercial scale extraction. ISA negotiators have spent more than a decade drafting the mining rulebook, which will cover everything from environmental rules to royalty payments. ISA countries set a goal of finalizing the regulations this year, but key issues in the draft rulebook remain unresolved, and negotiators appear unlikely to meet the deadline. What could happen next? It's unclear. The metals company previously said it would apply for a commercial mining license from the ISA on June 27th. Thursday's announcement throws that application into jeopardy. Some observers have questioned whether such a move would even be legal. I'm deeply concerned with the prospect of unsanctioned mining taking place in areas beyond jurisdiction, said Liz Caron. Director of Ocean Governance at the Pew Charitable Trusts. A research nonprofit. In an interview earlier this month, that would be contrary to international law. Guillen Grillo, the delegate from Costa Rica, told NPR that the ISA has sole authority over mining on the international seabed. This belongs to us, and the decisions should be made by us. The United States has traditionally respected the ISA process as customary international law. and the State Department has traditionally respected the ISA process. And the State Department sends representatives to observe ISA meetings. Multiple U.S. government agencies did not immediately respond to requests for comment on this story. After the metals company's announcement on Thursday, Barron told NPR that the ISA's incomplete mining rulebook, after more than a decade of negotiation, which evidenced that multilateralism had failed. The world needs strong leadership, and the U.S. has that right now. What's happening in Kingston, said Barron, referring to the ongoing ISA meetings, is not working. By all means, go ahead and sign your treaty, said Barron. We'll be out there. Trump administration lays out its evidence for deporting activist Mahmoud Khalil. Mahmoud Khalil is seen at a pro-Palestinian protest encampment at the Columbia University campus in New York on April 29, 2024. When pressed for evidence about why activist Mahmoud Khalil was arrested by immigration authorities last month, the Department of Homeland Security shared a 2-page memo from Secretary of State Marco Rubio that accuses the Columbia University graduate students of participating in anti-Semitic protests and disruptive activities. That memo is at the heart of the Trump administration's case against Khalil, according to his attorneys. The memo, which was undated, was released by Khalil's legal team on Thursday. The day after the Trump administration submitted it in an immigration court filing. It does not accuse Khalil of any crime. But Rubio writes that Khalil's continued presence in the U.S. would have potentially serious adverse foreign consequences and would compromise a compelling U.S. foreign policy interest. Khalil's lawyers say the government has provided no additional evidence to explain the basis of Rubio's conclusion. 2 pages, that's it, said Mark Van der Hout, one of Khalil's lawyers. There is no there at all. Khalil and his lawyers also dispute the charge of anti-Semitism. What is anti-Semitism? Van der Hout said during a Zoom meeting with the reporters on Thursday. It is criticizing Israel and the United States for the slaughter that is going on in Gaza, in Palestine. That's what this case is about. The lawyers for the Department of Homeland Security released their evidence against Khalil, who is a lawful permanent resident, after an immigration judge in Louisiana ordered them to do so at a hearing on Tuesday. The Trump administration is trying to deport the 30-year-old who played a prominent role in campus protests last year. Judge Jamie Comins said she will rule on Friday whether Khalil can be deported or whether he must be freed. Which side loses is likely to appeal to the Board of Immigration Appeals. Khalil's case has become a crucial test for how the Trump administration can go to deport non-citizen protesters. Khalil insists he was expressing support for Palestinians in Gaza, while administration officials accuse him of providing support to Hamas terrorism. Khalil's legal case is proceeding on multiple tracks. While an immigration judge considers the evidence against him, Khalil's lawyers are also challenging his March 8th detention in federal court in New Jersey. After ICE agents arrested Khalil on March 8th and shipped him to Louisiana, Rubio said he had revoked Khalil's green card. Rubio relied on a rarely used statute from the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952. That authorizes the Secretary of State to personally order the deportation of people whose presence in the U.S. the Secretary believes would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. But in 1990, after the Cold War ended, lawmakers modified the law to protect beliefs, statements, or associations that are lawful within the United States, and raised the standard for deportation to cases in which foreigners' presence in the U.S. would compromise a compelling United States foreign policy interest. In the memo, Rubio concedes that Khalil's activities would be otherwise lawful, but says that they nevertheless undermine, in addition, to efforts to protect Jewish students from harassment and violence in the United States. But Khalil's lawyers say Rubio has not shown any evidence to support that conclusion. His determination, quote unquote, has absolutely nothing to do with foreign policy, Van der Hout said. What does he talk about? He talks about First Amendment activity in the United States and the effect on people in the United States. Days after Khalil was arrested and detained, Homeland Security officials charged him with several additional civil violations. The alleged he withheld information on his 2024 green card application. including his work history with the United Nations Relief Agency and his involvement with a pro-Palestinian activist group at Columbia University. Khalil's lawyers deny those charges. The government filed additional documents on Wednesday in support of those charges, Vander Hout said. But it is zero to do with foreign policy charge, and there is zero support for the government's allegations about any misinterpretation. Free speech advocates argue that the administration is violating the U.S. Constitution by targeting immigrants for their activism and their political beliefs. Khalil and several other students and scholars who have been detained have challenged their arrest on constitutional grounds.